Hey VC, how's it going? Right, okay, a very quick video. It's a vinyl finds video, stuff that I picked up mainly during lockdown, so mainly online purchases as you'd expect. But this is what I'm listening to in the background. This is Johnny Harris and his album Movements from 1971 on Warner Brothers. I mean, first of all, I love that cover. I'm really not quite sure what's going on there, but I do love it. But yeah, so I read the other day that Johnny Harris had passed away a couple of months ago now, I think. But for those of you that don't know, he was a composer, British composer and arranger. He worked with the likes of Shirley Bassey, Tom Jones. He'd scored numerous films. But actually, I was reading his obituary, and in there it mentioned that he'd scored one of the Wonder Woman TV series back in the 70s, you know, with Linda Carter, so which I found very impressive. But yeah, I first heard this particular track that's playing in the background. It's a track called Stepping Stone on a blaxploitation compilation, probably about 25 years ago now. But yeah, full of funky drums and big crazy flutes. Yeah, wonderful stuff. So if you haven't heard this, definitely worth checking out. So cool. Right, okay. So this week I've been able to go to a record shop, which isn't something I've been able to say for a few months, as none of us have, you know. So right, but I won't show what I've bought. I'm still working my way through it. Apart from this one item, this is a 45 by Freddie McGregor. The track's called Humanity. It's on the Joe Frazier label. Yeah, so this track, the original of this is by Prince Lincoln Thompson. The first, he's recorded it several times, but the first time I heard one of his versions of it was on this album, I say, called Humanity, that he made with the Royal Razzies, I think 1979, 1980, something like that. Yeah, really nice stuff. Actually, the first time I heard the tune itself, though, was a cover by The Roots and John Legend, that album they put out about 10 years ago now, called Wake Up. They do a really nice version of this, but yeah, so this is Freddie McGregor's take on it. I really like all of his 80s music, so yeah, I was pleased to find that, and it's only a couple of quid, so really cool. Right, I'm doing a little drop on that as well. Right, Discogs purchases. So first up, this is an album by Sam Dees, The Show Must Go On. Now this, I can honestly say, is an album that I've been looking for 25 years. So I first came across Sam Dees on a Northern Soul compilation called Cooler Shakers. It's the opening track. The track is called Lonely for Your Baby. If you don't know it, it's a full-on Northern Soul dancer. It's wonderful. When I heard that, it made me look into him a little bit more, and I found out about this record. So he put out a number of singles in the late 60s, early 70s, but he only put out one album. And this is, I say, 1975 on Atlantic. It's very much a typical mid-70s soul album, but it does have touches of sort of Curtis Mayfield going on in here. I'll perhaps do a noodle drop on the first track, Child of the Streets, which has got a real Curtis vibe going on. But it's interesting, he only put out this one album at the time. He has put out albums, I think, in the late 90s, early 2000s and whatnot. But it's interesting he put this one album out at the time, because he did write for a number of artists throughout the 70s and 80s. He wrote for Aretha Franklin. He wrote for Gladys Knight. I know that Whitney Houston did one of his songs in the 80s. So it's interesting he only put this one out. And I've seen this album described as being the best Southern Soul album that you've never heard, you know. So whether that's still the case now, it does get a lot of attention nowadays. It's reissued a few years ago, but the reason why I hung on for an original was because the reissue that was put out, it was a US reissue, so even just to get it in the UK, it was still quite expensive, you know. So glad I hung on for this though. But great album, so I'll do a needle drop on that. So wonderful stuff. And another artist that only put out one album at sort of peak of their career, this is Carol Woods and her album Out of the Woods from 1971 on Ember Records. Again, this is a UK copy. I mean, look at that sleeve, fantastic, you know, so of the time, you know. But yeah, this is a straight soul album. She's got a nice voice. This is an album that I've bid on so many times on eBay, and I always get outbid, so I've had to cough up the cash for it in the end. But yeah, a really nice record, and again, I'll do a needle drop on that. Okay then, I've mentioned a few times before that one of my favourite vocalists is Richard Hawley. Now this is an album of his, I think from 2010. It's an album that I've been after for a while. When it came out, it only had a vinyl pressing of about 1,000 copies, so obviously original copies go for a fortune online now. This was reissued a couple of years ago by his record label, Santanta. Yeah, but a really nice album. So those of you who don't know, Richard Hawley, he was a guitarist for a number of years with bands like the Long Pigs. He played with Pulp. So he came to his solo career a little bit later on, you know. So, but he's a great songwriter, very yeah, an interesting songwriter, but it's his voice. It's all about his voice, you know. So my sister, I said before, my sister describes him, or calls him, Roy Morrissey, because his vocal is a bit of a mixture of Roy Orbison and Morrissey. A very warm vocal style. Well, he's described as having a golden voice, you know, that's what I say in the music press, and I wouldn't disagree with that. The songs are excellent. If you want an example off this album, I think the single on this was Open Up Your Door. Check it out online. But yeah, no, lovely stuff. He put out a trilogy of albums, I say, in the 2000s, starting with an album called Cole's Corner. All of the albums were named after places in Sheffield, his home city. So Cole's Corner was the first of 3, which is undoubtedly his masterpiece, and it is a masterpiece. If you haven't heard it, I'd definitely suggest seeking that one out. The second of the 3 was called Ladies Bridge, and I say the final one, this one is True Love's Gutter. But lovely stuff, glad to get a copy on vinyl at long last. Right then, I got some VCLT a couple of weeks ago now from Steve, Psych in the Valley. So he sent me 3 records. The other 2 records I'll show in my next video when I've had a chance to listen to them a little bit more. And the reason why I haven't played them that much is because I've been playing this record that he sent me to death. I absolutely love this record. It's an album by Janus. I didn't know the record before he sent it to me. I knew the sleeve, I'd seen the sleeve. I'd never heard any of the music. But yeah, so 1975 on Fantasy Records. It's right up my alley, you know, it's perfect for me. It's, I say, it's mid-70s soul, female vocal with male vocal harmonies. There's a track on here called Take Me Away, which is absolutely wonderful, and I'll do a needle drop on it. So thanks very much, Steve. Absolutely wonderful stuff. So I'll show the other 2 next time. And so that's on Fantasy, and interestingly comes in its own custom Fantasy bag, which is very nice. And finally, something that I picked up from a Discog seller when I picked up a couple of other items. This was only a £5. This is Ramsey Lewis and his album Les Fleurs from 1983 on CBS. Now, I've got lots of Ramsey Lewis albums, plenty from the 60s and 70s, but nothing from the 80s. But I heard his version of Les Fleurs on a compilation CD I was playing recently, so it made me, you know, got me interested, and I thought I'd pick this album up. I say it's only a cheap one, but it opens with a version of Stevie Wonder's Superwoman, Where Were You When I Needed You, which, if push come to shove, I'd say is my favourite Stevie Wonder tune. Absolutely wonderful stuff, and he does a really nice job of it as well. The album is a bit patchy. It's got a couple of very 80s, very cheesy moments, but certainly worth picking up still if you do see cheap. So cool. Cheers.
He's doing all he can to teach you the right way. So maybe one day you'll be the same way, and you gonna do?